Hey, good to see you today. We are on episode 30 of the Roundhouse Rundown. I'm Senator Craig Brandt. Today, we're going to recap what took place or didn't take place during the last week's 5-hour special session that was supposed to address public safety. We're also going to provide some commentary on President Biden stepping down and what that means for New Mexico politics. So this has been a really exciting last week, right? I mean, last week we came in here on and we were supposed to be working on making New Mexico safer. That's what the governor called the special session for, and that's what the governor messaged. In fact, the governor messaged one of my crime bills, messaged some crime bills by Senator Crystal Diamond, and so we had several bills. We also worked with the governor. Mark Moores worked with the governor on her crime bills, and we were very serious coming in here trying to do something about the crime issues. But we had been hearing for quite some time that the Democrats weren't going to even hear those bills. So we kind of had ahead of time, not we kind of knew ahead of time that they were going to come in and try to get out of here as quickly as possible, which was pretty disappointing. Obviously, we've got to come in, be prepared to stay. We had legislators that had rented casitas and hotel rooms for 3 or 4 nights, and yet we were only here for one day. So what happened is that the Democrats moved to kill all the bills except for House Bill 1. So every bill that was in play, every bill dealing with crime, the Democrats tabled. House Bill 1, they actually heard in House, came over to the Senate. We heard it quickly in Finance Committee, came down on the floor, and they voted for it. So what was House Bill 1? Well, House Bill 1 was to make sure that they got paid. Right. So, they weren't going to mess paying themselves. It also paid us, but, the main thing was to fund the special session. Then we also put special funding in there, and this was probably the only good thing that happened during the special session, right? Was we put some funding in play for the community of Ruidoso. We have up to 100 million total that's going to go to be used to help the victims of the fires and the flooding that's currently taking place down in Ruidoso. And it's really a stopgap measure because a lot of this money will come back to the state as FEMA comes through and pays for some of those things. That money that FEMA pays will prepay, kind of help some people out, get people over some hurdles, and then that FEMA money will come back to the state. And so we're going to be asking FEMA to reimburse us for those funds. Hopefully, the federal government will do so. It may take a few years, though. I mean, let's look at the other fires that have happened around the state. We had fires up in the northern part of the state 2 years ago, and there are families that still haven't been paid by FEMA. And so, we're still having issues with the federal government coming through on fires they started. And so, this one wasn't started by the federal government, but it was the federal government's lack of management of the forest that allowed it to get out of control so quickly. So that was really the only good thing that happened during the special session. But none of the governor's bills, none of our bills as Senate Republicans were heard in any committee. And we introduced them on the floor. We got to talk to them about them a little bit on the floor. And then as soon as House Bill 1 was passed, the Democrats tried to sine die, and they tried to do that unanimously, with unanimous consent. I objected to that, forced a vote, and most of us as Republicans voted against leaving. Why? Well, not because we wanted to be here, but because we wanted to deal with the crime issues that are facing New Mexico. But basically, Democrats decided that there is no crime issue facing New Mexico, that there is no crime crisis facing New Mexico. Maybe they ought to actually look, right? Maybe they ought to actually read the paper occasionally or listen to the news at night, because all you hear about is the crime that's going on in New Mexico. We've had a huge increase in crime. And I just want to thank the governor again. And I know some of you are like, why are you thanking the governor? Well, because the governor actually did want to deal with the crime issues. She actually called for dealing with the crime issues and actually called out her own people. So I want to give her credit for that. I want to give her credit for calling out the Democrats in the legislature, both in the House and the Senate, for not being willing to deal with the crime issues. So all the Democrats voted to basically say, we're fine with the status quo of what is happening with crime in New Mexico. We're just fine with that. We have no problem with that. We're just going to move on. Now, they'll make excuses and you'll hear them come with excuses. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, while every bill wasn't perfect, every bill could have been addressed. And let me tell you something else. Many of the bills that we were trying to deal with in this special session have been bills that the Democrats have killed previously. So this is not the first time that they have killed these bills. This is not the first time that they have decided not to deal with the crime issue. In fact, even the governor mocked Mark Ronchetti just 2 years ago about the crime issues and why are you running on crime? There's no crime problem. Well, that was during a year when we had a record number of murders in Albuquerque and around the state. Has that come down a little bit? Maybe a little bit, but it's way higher than what it should be. We have the highest violent crime rate in the United States with 780 incidents per 100,000 residents. That was 2022 numbers, which you got to go back a couple of years because that's how long it takes for statistics to catch up as they go through statistics. New Mexico also ranks second in the country for violent crime per capita, behind only Washington, D.C. Now, I don't know if you've been to Washington, D.C., but I will highly recommend that if you ever go to Washington, D.C., don't be out walking at night alone and make sure you know what neighborhoods you're in. I've only been there once, and I have no desire to go back. It is not a place that I find very safe. And yet that's what we face here in New Mexico. That's what every one of us face. And it's not just the metro area, as you'll hear some of the Democrats say. This is all over the state. This is happening everywhere. So what was the governor's reaction was really one to call out her own party, saying, you decided that you wouldn't even hear these bills that are backed by police chiefs, public safety unions, mayors, prosecutors, businesses. I mean, everyone was for these bills. Everyone was backing these bills to try to do something about the crime crisis we're having in New Mexico, except the Democrats that are in office. And I would say even the Democrats that are running for office, whether they're in office right now or not. I mean, let's be really, really honest, folks. If you want to change the crime crisis in New Mexico, you're going to have to change who's representing you in Santa Fe, because we're not going to pass bills up here that are dealing with the crime issues we're having in your neighborhood with the current people that are in office. We've been trying forever. And I am not, overstating this. I remember, I've been in office now for 12 years. I know it's shocking. It shocks me too. But I remember my first session up here, we were carrying bills dealing with crime. In fact, I remember our previous governor, Susana Martinez, was always attacked for being all crime all the time. Why? Because we had a crime issue then. It's only gotten worse. She saw what was coming down the pike. She saw what was going to be happening, and she was trying to get out ahead of it. Instead, she was mocked. The Democrats didn't join her 12 years ago, and nothing has changed on that issue in the 12 years, except things have just gotten worse. In fact, the only thing that's changed is they passed a bill called SB 5 that took away qualified immunity from our police officers to make it even harder for us to recruit officers to serve our state and to keep our communities safe. That's the only thing they've really changed, is made it worse. And now we have a lot less officers. It's hard to recruit officers to come into the state because they don't know if they're going to be protected in a lawsuit, personally protected. They don't know if their families are going to be protected against them losing their home or against them losing their retirement or anything else. So what we've done is made it worse. And I don't mean we, because as Republicans, we all voted against those things. But as a legislature, as a body, they voted to pass that. And they voted to make crime worse in the state of New Mexico, not better. Well, I think that we can see that New Mexico is not on a good path when it comes to these crime issues. I think every one of you know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Most of you have had a car stolen or a car broken into. In fact, Crystal Diamond during the session, the morning of the special session, her car was broken into and things were stolen out of her vehicle. So, but we've all faced that. In the Albuquerque metro area, I live in Rio Rancho, used to live in Albuquerque. I've had 2 cars stolen. 2. One in Albuquerque and one in Rio Rancho. So, I think we've all faced it. I coming out of Home Depot or coming into Home Depot one day, there was a guy stealing a box of tools, like the high-end Makita battery operated tools. And I started to get in the way and he showed me his gun. Well, I moved out of the way because I'm not going to allow myself to be killed over some tools. We've all seen and we've all faced crime issues in our state. It is nothing new. We read about it every day in the paper, all the killings that have been happening, all the people that get robbed. And yet the Democrats up here, the progressives, especially in the Democrat Party, they just want to let criminals out. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on and talk a little bit about what's happening nationally because, wow, there has been so much happen in the last week or just the last few days, right? We have on the political side, we have current President Biden was forced out. Let's just be honest here. He was forced out of the race by the Democrat Party. He had, I think, 14 million people voted for him to be on the ballot in November. That's 14 million people that were disenfranchised by the Democrat Party. Now, we don't know why, except that he was losing in the polls. That's the only real reason that we know of that he's bowed out, because just 10 days ago, those same Democrats who forced him out were talking about how great his health was. So either they were lying then or they're lying now. Believe your lying eyes, right? But when were they lying? It's not a matter of were they lying, it's when were they lying? Now or then. Kamala Harris just in the last 2 weeks talked about how he was up for the job, he could do another 4 years, he was doing great. And then he gets COVID again, and all of a sudden he can't serve another 4 years. That's interesting. I think she was lying then, to be honest with you, because I've seen with my own eyes our president go downhill. And quite frankly, it's been pretty rough to see. It's been pretty rough to watch how frail he's become, how he can't remember things from one minute to the next, more than the normal process of aging. Now, I'm no doctor, but I watched the same thing happen just in the last couple of years with my own in-laws. And you can see it happen as people get older. There's a natural forgetfulness, but this is anything but natural. And so I guess they're telling the truth now, right? But in New Mexico, we had over 100,000 people vote, and their votes are now being ignored. So you talk about, going against the democratic process, right? The democracy that the Democrats keep talking about. Well, who's really the threat to democracy? Now, first of all, let's all understand we are not a democracy. We're a republic. We're a democratically elected republic. What does that mean? It means we all vote on who's going to represent us to make the laws. We don't vote on the laws ourselves. Now, in some states, you have a process where you can do that, but nationally, we don't have a referendum process. And in this state, we don't really have one except to vote on bills that have been passed to basically reject them as a people. And we've never been able to get one of those through. So I would even challenge whether we even have one for real or not. But what we have is a Democrat Party who has decided to ignore 100,000 Democrats in New Mexico who voted for Biden to represent their party in November. So, in my opinion, they were disenfranchised by the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party now is going to back Kamala Harris, who, well, I think there's a reason that some of us call her word salad Harris. Because if you ever listen to her speak, it makes no sense. She's all over the place. So, welcome to the race, Vice President Harris. And, I think that that we'll get a new president, obviously. And I think that he will do a great job for us again. Because of the policies that Trump had before, whether you like him or not personally, or whether you like what he says or not personally, his policies were great for our country, and our country was doing great under his leadership. Our border was closed. The crime was not out of control across the whole country. It was still out of control here because of our own personal policies and our sanctuary cities and all that kind of garbage. But that spread all over the country under this president. Inflation was almost nothing under Trump. Under Biden, it's been out of control. So I think the one thing we can look forward to is that we're going to get our country back. We're going to be able to move forward. We can support Trump's policies and make our country great again. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. There's one thing that I want to ask all of you to do. I want you to make sure that you vote. And I want you to make sure that you get your neighbors to vote. And I also want you to find out who the Republican is running in your district for House or for Senate, and see how you can volunteer to work on their campaigns and help them win. Because we can win in November, and we can make this a better state. Well, thank you for joining me. If you want to email me, it's senate40@gmail.com. Also comment below. If you have some topics you'd like us to talk about, discuss in the future, comment down there and we'll take a look at them. Thank you again, Senator Brandt with the Senate Republican Leadership Office, and we'll see you next week. Hope you have a great week.